What most worries you now? If you look at diplomacy, economics, military, spheres of influence, what are your top concerns now in the very complicated relationship between the United States and China?
Well, you got to go back 8 years ago at the beginning of the first Trump term, and it was me and Mike Gallagher who was in my freshman class in the House, and Tom Cotton, maybe a few others who were, and President Trump in that first term. I mean, President Trump was the first candidate for president, Republican or Democrat, in my lifetime who was speaking out about the China threat and actually called China an existential threat to the United States of America. No, Republicans and Democrats before him, they never spoke, they never used the words that President Trump did. Remember 8 years ago when the first Trump administration rewrote the national security strategy for the military, they named China and Russia as great power competitors to the United States and started that process of revamping our military and the focus of our national security apparatus more geared toward the China threat than it ever was before. So Mark, I'm more optimistic today because when Gallagher and I and Cotton and others 8 years ago with President Trump were speaking about the threat, we got smacked down a lot, and a lot of our colleagues didn't agree with us. Wall Street has largely been in bed with China interests and selling out our jobs and our economy in a big way, and entangling our economy even more with China's economy. And President Trump has brought not just the Republican Party to a new place that we haven't been before, but I think he's brought the country to a place, the awareness, especially with COVID and the pandemic, and recognizing that our medical supply chain is so wrapped up in China. That awareness is there today more than ever before. So fast forward to right now, and what President Trump is doing with the tariffs is so important that, and I call it, he doesn't like to use this terminology, but this is what I tell Hoosiers at home, is that this is short-term pain, but the long-term gain for our kids, for our country, to disentangle our economy from China and diminish China's overall global economic stature is really good for America. And I think the tariffs are doing that. I mean, there's good evidence of it. I mean, whether it's, I know President Trump wants Apple to make iPhones in the United States of America, and I do too. But just the mere fact that they're moving iPhone production out of China to India, who is an ally of the United States, that's a really good step. And there's a lot more of that happening. Eli Lilly, which is a great company headquartered in Indiana, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, a $27 billion announcement pulling pharmaceutical manufacturing out of China, bringing it back to the United States of America. Roche Diagnostics, a medical device company, also in Indiana, big investments in our state. Honda Civic announcing that they're moving the next generation Honda Civic production to the state of Indiana, not to Mexico or Japan, but to the United States. All of that, the global supply chain and manufacturing, that economy coming back to the United States is really bad for China. It's really good for America long term. And there's been a lot more good news coming out of the tariffs that I think we might not feel all of it today, but in the long run, we're going to. It's going to help America get back on its feet and control our own destiny instead of China controlling our destiny for us. That's what it's all about, Mark.
Let me ask you about a couple ways in which the United States has been entangled, coupled with China, and ask you what your point of view on that, what you think the right thing to do is. Should American companies be making investments in China? Should they be doing deals in China? Should they be opening banks? Should they be buying factories? Should they be partnering? Or would you like to see all of that end?
Well, of course, I'd like to see all that investment in the United States or in places that are beneficial to the United States. But the bottom line is that there should be no incentive for American companies to sell out America and do business in China. I mean, look at NVIDIA. I mean, of all people, I mean, I got to the United States Senate. I never thought I would find anything that I agreed with Senator Elizabeth Warren on. But last week we sent a joint letter, Senator Warren and myself, to the CEO of NVIDIA, calling out NVIDIA for opening up a research and development facility in China to, quote, help close the AI gap in China. Why would an American company that's built on American ingenuity and all of that investment in the United States of America want to help our biggest adversary close their AI gap to the detriment of the United States. There should be no incentive for an American company to do that, and we should call it out when we see it. And in this case, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Jim Banks, the far left, and a senator on the right coming together to call out this type of investment in China that's not good for America. I think you're going to see a lot more of that to come as the parties realign and recognize that China is the biggest threat to America militarily and economically, to the working class men and women of this great country. That's what we should be calling out and incentivizing those companies to make those investments in the United States of America instead. And that's what President Trump is largely doing through the reciprocal tariffs. And it's been, in my view, it's been very effective so far.
Did you get an answer to that letter?
We sent it last week. Haven't heard from the CEO yet, but we'll keep pushing. Senator Warren is the ranking member of the Banking Committee. I'm a new freshman member on the Banking Committee. We have oversight of export controls and the Exim Bank and some of those federal jurisdictions. So we're going to keep pushing. We're not going to let up on them.
What about Chinese students, graduate students, undergraduate students in higher ed coming to the United States? Should they get any slots in American colleges and universities, or would you like to see no Chinese students studying here?
Well, I think, America is the most generous country in the world, and we welcome foreign students at universities. In Indiana, for example, Purdue University is a large Chinese student visa student-based population at Purdue University. But what President Trump is doing, I think, is really important in cracking down on Chinese students with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. And I think that is a common sense step to prevent our students from coming to the U.S. and stealing our intellectual property, being involved. Those students should never be involved in sensitive national security related research that goes on at a lot of these universities. We shouldn't allow that to happen. So those are the things that we'll be cracking down on, and President Trump is doing that.
All right, none of us want spies here. But what about students we don't have any reason to believe are spies? I'd say almost any Chinese student who comes here has some ties to the Communist Party, I think, just by definition. But would you want to see no Chinese students be allowed to study in the United States, or just ones who the government says are spies?
I don't. I think many of these Chinese students they recognize the authoritarian nature of their government just like we do. But there are students that you can directly tie to family members of the Chinese Communist Party. And for way too long, Mark, we've allowed those students to come to our universities. I've worked on this issue for eight or 9 years, stopping those students from being involved in our research at these universities. And right now, there are so few controls on that. We should definitely crack down on that more.
But again, you're not against all Chinese students, just ones who you think pose a danger.
That's right. And there are simple and common sense ways that we can prevent those students from giving a visa to a child of a Chinese Communist Party member. Is something that we should never do, but for too long that's happened.